Because when you go and you have a friend or you have a confidant or somebody, you sit down, you have this really hard, sometimes in-depth, hurtful, meaningful, where you dig up all kinds of stuff that you've been through, and it's hard. But now your connection with that person is just like so much deeper than it is with anyone else. That's the same conversations you can have with your body.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, welcome to the Crushing Iron Podcast.
Man, I was wondering if you were testing my patience today.
Yeah, I always like to do that.
I know you do every once in a while. It deserves to be tested because patience is one of my virtues, I feel like. Yes, welcome. Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 262.
Yes, it is.
On the road without my handy dandy podcast counter and still nailed it. I am coming to you live from Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas. Is there something going on down there this weekend?
Yeah, there is allegedly a big race going on Saturday, and the sun is out, and it shall be quite warm. Which, I mean, let's be honest. If you decide to race in Texas, no matter when, you should anticipate it being fairly warm. But it looks like, honestly, a great weekend of. I know when they had Texas 70.3 here a few weeks ago, they had absolutely horrific weather and ended up canceling the race and the run. But it's going to be warm. But I mean, hey, like I said, if you're in Texas and you want to race in Texas, you got to prepare for the heat. But all in all, the sun's going to be out. Looks like basically no clouds and just sunshine for the next 3 or 4 days. So it's going to be a great weekend. But yeah, I came down here yesterday, traveled down, and we'll be hanging out with a few of the athletes we work with tonight over here at the Scandridge House, having some Italian food. And the race is on Saturday, so we'll be there for that. And then be headed back home probably on Sunday to get ready for our first tri-camp there in Nashville starting on Wednesday. So pretty busy next week and a half, but I'm excited. The season's in full swing, and we are ready to go.
That's great, man. I'm excited to be here today.
You don't sound that excited.
Well, got to keep it level.
Yeah, okay.
Can't give it all away.
Okay.
Can't give that overexcitement. No, just a Crushing Iron Podcast. Like to share some of our stories and help people find their groove in training, maybe in life.
We had a request for today's topic.
Yeah, we did. Well, we did?
Yeah, on via the apparently we need to talk about pain.
Oh, about pain.
Yes.
I thought you were going to go to speed. Because I noticed that other guy posted, I think it was Lance, he posted something about how do we get faster. I've been trying for years.
Oh yeah. There was a pretty good thread on that. Yeah, if you're just now joining us and you've stuck out here for the first 2 minutes, Crushing Iron Podcast come to you every Monday and Thursday. We also have a Crushing Iron closed Facebook group that's fairly large, and it's actually a really great place to come and get some solid feedback and advice, and it's just a great place to kind of go through ideas and get your questions answered in a really safe place in terms of not getting a bunch of flack from people who are just aiming to be sarcastic and put you down and make you feel stupid for asking the most normal question. So I did see that one, but then somebody else I think. And we touched on this in one of our very first episodes, but one of the athletes, I can't remember his or her name, but talked about that they can't make themselves, or they're having issues or trouble.
Oh yeah.
What they feel is pushing them to being really, really uncomfortable. Because I think, I think racing and like going deep and dark and like pain, I think that's. I don't want to say that that's actually a good thing. I just think that, I definitely see where they're coming from. I think it's a delicate conversation, to be honest with you, because there's so many in endurance events and things that are so long. I think there are things that we can practice in our training to make ourselves be more comfortable being just, whether you want to say in pain or being uncomfortable or whatever. I think that it's something you can practice, but I definitely think it's something you also have to be very careful about it. So I scrolled through. I found the actual post from Karen Newman, and it says, and I just lost it because somebody else threw a post in there. Is there an episode or book to help me push myself harder? I hear you guys talking about reining it in. I need to work on pushing through and staying strong and assertive and confident through my whole event. I would love any advice you will have. And it really is. It's an absolutely great topic. It's a very complex topic too, in my opinion, in terms of not going over and not, because we talk about, in a lot of things, because it's, some of it's science based and a lot of it's just more towards, the athletes who want to go out and be more like weekend warriors and crush workouts and do all these things. But there's a lot you can do in training to put yourself in uncomfortable situations or even shorter races to where you can really kind of put yourself in a position to allow yourself to fail. And I even kind of had this conversation with, I think, another athlete that I work with personally, who is kind of struggles with this sometimes too. And this athlete said, I'm always afraid. This athlete is doing a relay portion of a full marathon this weekend. And I told her verbatim, I said, I want you to try and blow up on Saturday. It's 6 miles. She's well trained to run half marathons. She's a very good athlete, and I just said, I want you to try and blow up on Saturday. And she said, all right, I will. Thanks. She said, I'm always afraid of doing that in fear of failing. And I said, failing is always holding back. And so I think it's a great topic. I think it's something that, I know I've gone back and forth with and struggled with in certain areas. And so, yeah, I think it's a good topic and one that you and I can both share some good tips, advice, and some personal experience on both of those.
Sure. Yeah, I love the topic. Before we get started, can I throw out an open plea to all of our listeners?
Absolutely, man. It's your show.
Well, I was just thinking, if you wouldn't mind helping us out a little bit, we're trying to define some things. So I'd like to kind of, for longtime supporters to the podcast, or even if you're kind of new and just starting to get in here, but there's something you've gotten. What I'm trying to get at is what you.
Let's get to the point here. Let's just ask him out.
Just a tough question, man. No, I'm just kidding.
Ask him out.
I just want to. I was hoping that somebody, everybody could send emails to crushingiron@gmail.com and just tell us what you enjoy about the podcast and what it means to you. Maybe some of your personal stories about how it's helped in either sports or life. If you're an active athlete or in the Facebook group, how would you describe the community? Stuff like that. We're definitely about triathlon, but a lot of people say that we're more than that, and we'd like to hear what that is in your own words. So if you have a couple minutes, maybe just send an email to crushingiron@gmail.com, and it would really mean a lot to us.
Are you just asking what is crushing iron, or what does C26 mean to you?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah,
just different. We get different perspectives and stuff like that. We're just trying to figure out exactly, I guess, what that is and what our podcast and the community and everything means to you. And then, if we can define that a little bit better, maybe we can give more and relevant stuff regarding all that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
So yeah, open feedback, direction, and we started this podcast 2.5 years ago as just you and I living in different states, starting up conversations and wanting to connect, and it's grown into something fairly substantial, at least for us in our small little world. And we've 260 episodes now, and work with so many awesome people and athletes and different experience levels and in different capacities across the world. And we hold 3 to 4 camps every year. We've had hundreds of people come into town for our camps. We got 25 people coming in this next week from all over. And we've always tried to kind of be I've always liked to have direction and have purpose and go in a somewhere that we're both comfortable with and that we feel like is going to create and offer value to our listeners. and not really just let it be what we want it to be about. And so, I think it'd be great it's always good to kind of pull or reach out to your customer, even though our podcast listeners are our customers, but they're people who consume it. And, if we can do anything better, or you would like to see us do something that we haven't done yet, we'd love to hear that. And we're obviously not some big corporate franchise model, so we don't have to go ask the talking heads of permission. We can just do it. So love the feedback, and would love to send that over to Mike at crushingiron@gmail.com. What you like, what you feel like it means, and the value you get from it. And then obviously what else you'd like to see us do differently or just add. And we'll do the best we can to offer that and continue to drive this podcast for our listeners.
Mm-hmm. Now on to pain.
What a loaded topic. It is. It's a great, and to be fair, this listener's right. We do, and as a coach, it's how I'm wired most of the ways. It's funny that most athletes probably think like coaches are meant to force you to go faster and do things that you're not really ready to do. But coaching is also a lot. It's really a lot like of slowing athletes down and being purposeful and precise with how you handle and distribute load. And pain, though, is one of those things that I think everyone has like a relative. Pain is relative, and it's also one of those things that we always kind of like to feel like our pain threshold is like incredibly high. Like I could probably handle that. Like toughen up. But again, like pain is just so relative. It's impossible. I think it would be so interesting and neat. We've like scientific advances are coming like every minute, it seems like, but we all have a different pain scale, and we all consume and are affected by and feel pain differently. And I think it would just be insanely interesting to have some kind of like gadget or device to where you and I could stand side by side, and we might have like a electrode or something connecting us, and you get pinched and then I get pinched, and we're able to feel and differentiate the level of pain and the sensation that we both feel because we're both different, because it's always going to be different. And that goes with endurance sports as well. I think I've always found myself this way, in that I operate much better and I'm much more comfortable handling like an 80 to 90% effort for a long period of time versus like a 5K all out effort. It's just me. I feel like it's the way I was. I think it's also from swimming year round growing up. Like you're able to endure really, really difficult things and feelings and pain thresholds and being uncomfortable for long periods of time. So I think it's just how I was molded, then the things I went through in my life. I think it's just how you get to where you are as an adult, as a triathlete, as an endurance athlete, cyclist, runner, or swimmer. And I think we all find ourselves in categories and can probably look back onto races or training sessions or events and say, I probably could have pushed you a little bit more. I think I gave in, or did that really hurt as bad as I said it did? Because we talk about this all the time in terms of giving like you think you're done and things are too painful, and so you slow down until you get to like a half mile from the finish, and look at there, fastest split. I mean, it's not even if you're racing somebody. I see it all the time with athletes when you're tracking your favorite people on like the Iron Track app, and it's like, mile 22, 10-minute mile, mile 24, 10-minute mile, mile 25, 10-minute mile, fit to finish 8:20.
Yep.
It's like, so everyone's done it. Like you find that in you. It's just the when you find it and the how long you can hold it. That is, I think, the difficult balance of, if I push myself, and again, I think this athlete that I'm talking about specifically that I work with brought up, I think one of the biggest points is how we define in our relationship to pain. It's often also the weight of that result of what it might lead to, I think, is actually the pain that we're the most scared of. And what I mean by that is that momentary pain of really digging deep in a race, that pain may be something that you could do and you can handle, and your body can withstand it, and your brain is willing to tell your body to continue to push and continue to go there and to not give up. But I think the part of the pain that we often don't talk about is the pain afterwards of failing, quote unquote, or not succeeding, or bonking, or burning your biscuits before the finish. And are you willing to find out what it feels like to go that way at least once or twice, to find that rivet or that zone you can go into where this is all I've got. I know I can hold this effort and it's super painful, but once I get to this, I know it's not going to get any worse, but I can hold this. But we all have that fear of, but if I go out too fast, then I'm going to have to walk a little bit, or I'm going to have to slow down a lot. And then my time, I don't want to be that person who like does that. So it's a very huge, like, fine line in wanting to execute your race, but then also like allowing yourself to dig really deep and have that internal conversation with yourself without having external factors interfere with that conversation, whether it's looking at your watch and your watch telling you you're going too fast or you're going too slow, or what is this going to do to my overall finishing time. And, again, I think it all goes back to, what we talked about on Monday even, and the two things you can control in the race are your effort and your execution, and pain is a part of both of those.
Yeah, going back to what you said about how you feel comfortable at 80% or whatever that number is, and you grew up swimming. I think it's an interesting thing to think about that a lot of people that are in triathlon didn't necessarily grow up in endurance sports, whether it be the running or long cycling or swimming or whatever, and they kind of get into it from other sports. And that was one of the things that I went through, was this whole idea of maintaining for a long time. I mean, endurance, right? Endurance sports. So, like, I played baseball, and I would run out to play shortstop, and then, there'd be a pitch. I'd kind of get intense, and then I'd ease up and kick dirt around and spit and maybe look at the, girls in the stands for a while and just do whatever you do till the next pitch. And there's really not that sort of, like, consistent intensity, not all on. I mean, it's more all on because you're kind of ramped up, and then you sprint for about 20 feet, then you throw the ball, and then you walk back to where you are, you run the base. And I mean, I remember running out at triple was like all of us would get up and just be sucking gas, it'd be like the longest thing we endured in a straight set. So it's an interesting thing about, because that's why I've always wondered that it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I can sort of find that zone where you're talking about, where you can sustain it, maintain it for a long time without going out of your boundaries. And that's why I feel like I've just naturally from the beginning I've been more efficient or successful, I guess, on hilly courses, for example, because it sort of would be my memory is more about being intense and then, kind of taking off some time on the downhill or whatever the case may be. And I don't necessarily think that's the right way to do endurance sports, but I'm just saying that sometimes people aren't used to holding a certain effort for extended periods of time.
Yep.
And there's a pain threshold that you have to get used to, and you have to build your chassis and your body and your bones and your tendons and things like that. They have to be able to take that. So I think
let me ask you this. Do you feel like you're a better full distance or half distance athlete racer? Because I would argue you're a better full distance racer than you are a half.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I would argue that I'm a better 70.3 racer than I am a full racer. And I think it's an interesting conversation. Obviously, I want to stay on topic here.
No, but I think that's I think it's a good thing, because I think I have a belief system as to why that may be.
Right, but I think that, again, like going back to your baseball days, like you had to stay focused and for a very long period of time, and so I think that's so the longer it went, you still had to stay focused and engaged. Whereas swimming, you're never doing anything for 3 to 4 to 5 hours. It's just hard, and you're doing a lot of it all the time, and it's isolating. But it's just, and some of it's all out, but a lot of it's just all out. Yes, in terms of swimming and like the actual event when you race it, but other than that, you can't sprint, for 3,000, 4,000, 6,000 yards a day. You're just doing, you're just at a good, 80, 85, 90% here or there. And so I think that's like the way that I'm wired. And I would definitely say that if I had to choose like my better event, that half distance is definitely my best event, because Olympic distance, I like proved this last year to myself. I was so disappointed. Like, I did well, but like my watts in the Olympic were the same as a 70.3. Just because I couldn't find that different gear. But then when it comes to a full, I think that I find myself always just kind of gravitating towards that half distance. I just feel like it's a better event for me. And not just, and I think that's a discussion that people should have with themselves in terms of looking in the mirror and looking at their skill set, looking at their abilities, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, and how you've been wired, how have you been raised? Like, are you and it's funny because you also see athletes who have these like really, really high engines they've been built through shorter events, through high school and college. Maybe they ran track or they did some, but they have just like a huge engine. And they're really great at sprint, Olympic, and then if they can nail it, they're just incredible 70.3 athletes. But then what you also find is it's very, very, very difficult for them to make that leap to a full distance, because the game and the intensity level is just so different that it's just foreign. It's foreign to them, and they would rather, and so they struggle. And so I think it's maybe another good topic for a different day. And oftentimes we have that phrase like race with the horse you trained on, but it also could be pick pick races based on that, based on the horse you've become, throughout the course of your life and the things that you've gone through. Because I know athletes specifically that are definitely more wired and more geared towards the full distance. They do better. They're just better athletes than they are at the 70.3 distance. And so I think that's a great conversation to have. But I also think it's relative to pain and our relationship to not so much being comfortable with the pain, but how relative it is to us, and whether you would like to succumb to a 8 to 9 to 10, 12 hour, 14 hour level of pain and the tolerance you would need for that level of pain, or a very, very hard, painful, intense 4.5, 5.5 hour pain. 70 point. And they're totally different, yet in a way they're the same. Because you in terms of pain, it's just distributed differently. And I think, like, again, like going back to, like, I guess more specific when it talks about pain, is that's why I'm such a huge fan of including negative split, like fast finish running and tempo runs, like zone 3, like your open half marathon effort runs in training. I think they're just great stimulus, but B, a lot of athletes get really carried away and really confident and really kind of, honestly, like overcompensate and give themselves a little too much credit for what they think or what they can do on the track, or what they can do for a minute, or what they can do for 3 or 4 minutes. Like, congratulations, that means borderline nothing when it comes to how the longer distance you're going to race. But doing tempo efforts, I think I like to agree, are because they're just super uncomfortable, but they're the appropriate level of uncomfortable to where you can continue to kind of dig a little bit deeper and get a little bit more painful. And guess what? You can hold it for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And really, I mean, that's a long time not to just be uncomfortable and have some pain, but to focus and not back it back down. And the same goes for like negative split fast finish running, is it teaches you to go into just knowing the fact that your legs are going to be tired, but you have to tell your body, okay, I know this is towards the end of the week. I know that we put in a lot of training. I know the fatigue is high. I know we've already ran for 45 and 50 minutes, an hour. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is find a way. And a lot of times it's not so much your body is telling you that it's super tired. It's just you're letting your body make all the decisions too, and telling you that it's tired. When your mind is also insanely important and ultimately controls your body to where if you want to force it to dig deeper, and again, don't get me wrong, it might not always be going from a 9-minute pace, working your way all down to a 7-minute pace. It might be, starting your negative split at like an 8 and getting down to like 7:30, 7:20. And then at that point, it's all about raising your effort level as high as you possibly can to simply hold on to that 7:20.
And or relaxing.
Exactly. And not forcing it and not overrunning, meaning like you're trying to force and run the pace. It's just the pace is what you're running.
Yeah, it's a patience game there.
Yes. Yeah.
With your training, I mean, because we can all run faster than we probably train, but is it going to make sense, Because if you're running comfortably at 8:30 and all of a sudden you're trying to like those high intervals and you're not ready to hit yet, you're in the 5s or something silly. That's just not going to, your body's not going to adapt that. I mean, it could for that particular day, but I don't think in the long term that doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally. But and I want to spin this just a little bit back to because I have a theory about the baseball thing that it's interesting you brought up that am I a better Ironman full or half guy, because it makes sense to me when I think about it. When you think about what baseball was for me, it was a lot of double headers. It was a lot of running in, running out, and sitting down. So what's the worst thing that you can do after a race is sit down for about 30 minutes, right? Or 20 minutes. You remember how your legs felt? Or you feel? Like if you sit down for 10 minutes after training and you get up, your legs are fried.
Oh, God. They're stiff as a board.
Think about it. I mean, I know that baseball doesn't get a lot of credit for like being an athletic sport necessarily, from you especially, but think about what that means, though. Like if you're out there like actively doing stuff with your legs and then you come down and sit for 10 minutes in between innings and you got to get back up, and like I remember specifically how difficult that started to get towards the later part of a second doubleheader or a second game. Every time I got up, it was like I was hard moving, let alone going out and actually performing. So I wonder if what you're asking makes a lot of sense, because I'm used to sort of the ups and downs of the long day.
Mentally and physically.
Yeah, mentally and physically. Because and plus, back in college, of course, we were drinking all the time, and I was probably inflamed. Inflammation is a huge part of all this. I think if you're chronically a little bit more prone to being inflamed, that's naturally a pain situation. So if you're kind of used to that, I think sometimes we talked about it all the time. Like back when like when you were drinking, and how you could just like plow through things because it was just like that pain element that you built a base for pain.
It's weird. It's something that I think I honestly still struggle with in terms of when, because, and I think that's how
like the math from a masochistic perspective or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, man.
Well, I think it's just an interesting conversation because I think as people, not just as athletes, but as people, our relationship to pain changes over time. And there are certain times in our life to where we're probably more resilient, or things are painful that now probably wouldn't be painful to us. And I remember before I got sober, like the more pain, the better. And because for me, it was curing. It wasn't curing, obviously, but at the moment, it felt it provided a resolution. It was able to drown out all the other things I was going through in my life. It was creating as much pain as possible on one end. It's kind of like when people say, "Oh, you have a headache? Well, why don't you pinch yourself really hard for a while? It'll take your mind off of it." That's basically what I was doing. And so I was creating pain.
Distraction.
Yeah, it's a distraction. It's just it's a pain that at least
it's like you were numb and you needed to feel more or something.
Yeah,
that's how I think about it sometimes.
And it's a pain that I knew I could control, and that I was more comfortable with. And I think that's probably the conversation is that was pain I was comfortable with. And the other pain I wasn't, because I wasn't dealing with it the right way. And so
Right. Yeah.
now, like sometimes when I think about like, and it eats my lunch sometimes. To when I go back and look like still to this day, I've had like six or seven 70.3 races that have all been in like that 4:30 range. But my best race, quote unquote, my PR is still before I got sober. It's not always going to be that way, because I'm definitely going to break that 4:30 barrier. But it's sometimes those thoughts creep in your head. It's like, oh, well, I wonder if you can go back to that. Like if you can dig that deep, and if you can, then are you ever going to be able to be faster? Or as I think as parents too, you get to a point, you have kids and you look at your life a different way. Like I work with athletes that are like, I don't go down hills the same anymore, because I feel like I have more to lose. Like I'm not a big descender. I won't go down 50 or 60 like I used to when I was in my 20s. Now, like I have family and kids, and I've just got, it's too much to risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think again, like that's also a conversation with pain that you need to have, is that risk versus your definition of the reward. Am I willing to put forth the risk to be in more pain to get this reward, or am I just okay with a reward that's a much safer result? And I don't think you're ever going to know the answer, but I think it's a good conversation you need to have with yourself, in terms of looking back throughout the course of your life and through training, and think, when did I just say no to my body, in that I wasn't ready to give in to the pain? Like there are definitely a few instances in my life I can think of, but there's also like this one specific instance that I can think of last year when I was training, to where I just finally, I think I even read it in my Training Peaks comments, but I said I did Texas 70.3 last year, raced well. We came back in town. We had camp the next week, and then the week after that, we went to Disney. And then after Disney was like getting ready for Chattanooga 70.3, and I remember I went out to the lab like twice and tried to push these intervals to get one of my last long rides in, and I just didn't have it, quote unquote, didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was also I didn't have it I didn't have it a lot in the legs, that's for sure. But then I definitely didn't have it in my mind to just work through it and force myself through it. Yet I went out the next day. I still remember this, right? It's probably one of my best training rides. Interestingly enough, it's probably one of my best training rides to date. And I went out and I got super tired after like 30 minutes of my first interval, and I felt like absolute garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just had this conversation with myself that was like, we're not doing this again. Like I'm not doing this again. I'm not taking my bike back to the car. I'm not going to try. We're figuring this shit out right now. And I just absolutely went at it. And it was supposed to be a 20-minute interval, and I got to 20, and I said, and I don't, condone this all the time, but I said, screw 20, I'm going 25. And then I got 25, and I said, screw this, I'm going 30.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to 30, I said, screw this, I'm going 35, and I'm going to raise my effort. And I said, oh, screw this, I'm going to go even higher. I'm going higher. And I think I ended up doing like this really long, like, and I smashed myself. Like, I'm not going to lie, I totally smashed myself. But it was still one of the best rides I'd ever done, like putting out watts. But the moral of the story is that I just had to have that conversation that was like, you know what, I'm tired of this. Like, I'm just not going to use this anymore as an excuse. Like, yeah, I don't feel good. Yeah, I feel like crap. But you know what, I'm over that. I'm going to find a way, and I'm going to make this work. And it was super uncomfortable. Once I got to like this level of discomfort, I almost came comfortable. Like, I liked it. And I think it was also because I was in that minute, and in that moment I was controlling it. I was controlling the level of pain. I was telling myself to go harder. I was telling myself to push more. But I think the story for myself too was I was telling myself that you can actually do more. So it's painful, but you know what? Let's make it more painful. Let's push it more. And I don't do that very often, and I obviously don't condone that, but I think that one example is just kind of it's an example of the conversation you have to have of, is it really that painful? And I mean that in like the most broadest term, is like, or is it just like, I don't like the way that it feels?
Right. Pain or uncomfort.
Exactly, because those are two, like my high school football coach, he would always tell us, are you hurt or are you injured? Because they're two totally different, categories. Injured, you can't even walk. You're out. You shouldn't even be in uniform. If you're a little bit hurt, you should probably go play. Now, is that the greatest advice ever? Probably not. But I think it's the same. I think it's kind of the same thing. Is it really pain, or you just don't like the way that it feels?
Mm-hmm.
And those are two very different things. And again, I think if you ask yourself, is that actual pain? Because we've all felt pain. We've felt mental, emotional, and physical pain. And a lot of us have felt in tremendous pain before, mentally and emotionally. But if you look back on times in our lives when we've actually also experienced really intense physical pain, for most of us, our first inclination is to downplay it. You know what? It's bad, but it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I broke and my mom did the same thing when she fell down the steps, broke 3 ribs and punctured. She's like, yeah, I don't know, but I think I'm okay. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, you just, you're. I mean, she didn't know what she had. I'm like, no, you're in a lot of pain. You go, but no, I think I just need to sit up for a little bit. I just should give myself a minute.
Mm-hmm.
When I got undercut playing basketball and fractured my elbow in a bunch of pieces, I got up and I was like, yeah, but this, I was like, it's bad, but it didn't hurt that bad. So we downplay it. So we've all had these conversations with extreme pain where we've broken something or strained something or whatever it is, something physically, but it's like you're prepared for it, and then you deal with it, or you go and something's gonna be painful and you just prepare, but it's still painful, but you're able to mentally and emotionally invest in knowing that it's going to be that way, so you accept it. And so I think the question we could just ask ourselves is, all right, that's painful. That's not painful. I just don't like the way that it feels, but that's okay. And you and I talk about this all the time, just one-on-one, and then we've talked on the podcast in terms of how I deal with, and how I suggest oftentimes athletes deal with these negative thought patterns, is to go into those negative thoughts, not to steer away, not to be in denial, not to pretend like they don't exist, but to go into them and say, all right, I hear you, brain. I hear you. I hear, past trauma, whatever you want to, whatever it is. I hear you telling me that I can't do this today, but I'm choosing not to listen to you. And you go, but instead of because the thing is you hear these whispers, and if you don't address them, you don't tell them to shut up and just ignore them, and they can keep talking if they want to, but you're not going to listen. Guess what's going to happen? They're just going to keep whispering to you all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you're going to lose that focus and distraction, and you're going to wake up the next day and you're going to believe it. It's that subconscious, stories that we end up accepting, and pain is the same way. If you pretend like it's not there, and then you're like, the only way I can make it shut up is just to ignore it, and ignoring it physically means lowering my intensity to where it can't even speak to me. Versus, yeah, that is painful. I see you, and you know what? I'm okay with this. You know what? Let's make it a little more, not painful, but more uncomfortable, or let's test myself a little bit more. And it's just that back and forth conversation that you have to have of, is it pain, or I just don't like the way that it feels? And again, I think that's what you have to ask yourself.
You almost, I just took a note there. I was like, it's almost like sometimes you have to open your pain gateway, your discomfort gateway a little bit. And, I think back to when I started doing triathlon. Dude, I was in pain all the time, my legs, and I would always, and you probably see this a lot with maybe athletes that are just getting into the sport, and there's these things that, oh, my ankles messed up, my heel hurts, my IT, all this sorts of stuff happens. And I was thinking about this the other day. I still think I have some of those pains, but I've just been able to they're not as intense. You know what I mean? They're the same types of things. But like if I start running, for example, and I'm like, oh no, what is that? My knee? My knee screwed up or something. And I just kind of, like you're saying, go into it and like just try to correct it. Maybe I feel like, all right, well, maybe I'll just try and balance my stride or whatever the case may be. And those pains, I wonder a lot if they're the same levels of pains, but I just have kind of moved past them because I faced them, or whatever the case may be. But the idea of like hitting new levels or opening that gateway to pain and kind of feeling things, acknowledging them, and then saying, I'm going to be okay. And then you, over time, really one of the biggest things about pain sometimes is just the confidence that that you're okay. It's like these signals that you get all the time that are saying, hey, what is going on with you? What are you doing to me right now? Your body's like just always trying to protect itself. And the more you kind of familiarize yourself with that, the better. Now, you were talking about that day that you just thrashed yourself. And I think you probably want to point out, too, that while you did that, and you don't typically recommend that, but that was on a bike. It's like different to do that running, I think.
Totally different. Yeah, it's like it's 100% totally different.
Yeah, it's not as it's definitely a little bit more okay on the bike than the.
I definitely wouldn't. Like I said, I definitely don't recommend. We do that.
I had a quick sidebar question too, because you brought something up regarding you don't take downhills as hard as you might have used to, or aggressively.
Yeah, 100%.
And so what that made me think of was the first time I did Wisconsin, which obviously has 18,000 hills on it. I remember coasting most of the downhills, and I had a pretty good ride. So I think before any of my exposure to power meters or any of that sort of thing, I was probably attacking the climbs pretty hard. So my question is, if that in fact is the case, if some people don't feel as comfortable aggressively going down hills, is there a balance in that? Like a recovery element, that if you can go up hills maybe a little bit harder than normal if you're trying to maintain, say, 180 watts the whole ride or whatever, when you're going to go up a hill maybe at 250 and then just coast down it. Does that kind of balance out over the course of a ride, or does that happen?
I mean, I had this conversation with an athlete yesterday, is that generally, cycling and running the opposite. You should no, I don't want to say you should be comfortable and be prepared to push the uphills and not push the downhills, because the return on investment that you're going to get is the opposite. So if you push it a little bit on the uphills, you might go from 12 miles an hour to 15 to 16. If you push it on the downhills, you might go from 30 to 31 for a much shorter time. It's like time you save going up versus time versus ROI and time you might save in watts on the downhill, going 1 mile an hour for going way up in your watts over the course of like the next 35 seconds versus the 4 minutes on the first side of the climb. And so generally it doesn't. I don't think it affects me at all. But that's how you should approach hills anyway.
And obviously the slope matters. And
obviously the terrain all matters. But I don't think there's kind of a direct correlation there. I don't think that way. Like, I don't think I have to make up time. But I think an interesting question is what is your definition of pain?
What is my definition of pain? That is a good question. I think for for me, a lot of times I've faced it usually on the run of a long day, and it's like a hip kind of like something that I know is not going to go away. Like it almost feels like I've exhausted my capabilities, and I've tried other things to get by. So that's a really good question, man.
Isn't it? It's like I can't even think of my own answer. Like, because again, pain is it's something that I think for me, it's like something that I don't want, I didn't anticipate, and I can't control. Like that's pain, because I think the level of because again, it doesn't have to always be physical. It can be mental and emotional.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's painful, is because again, like if we go back into like, and you think through, and I think this is obvious with people in general, that we have this ability to deflect and drown out our own pain, emotional, mental, and physical, in lieu of, or in divert our attention and our care and our energy towards the person next to us. You and your best friend get in the same car accident. Your arm is hurt, so is theirs. Most people, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm fine. How are you? How can I help you?" And then the next thing you know, you're like, "Wait a minute, I forgot my arm was even broken."
Mm-hmm. That's the adrenaline or the endorphin rush.
It's the adrenaline, endorphin, but it's also that, like, going back to the Steve Magnus podcast we did last year or 2 years ago. It was like he talked about athletes are willing to dig deeper when they are going deeper for something greater than themselves, and or for someone, and that you're always able to go deeper. And to me, I think that's also comes back to that relationship we have with pain and our ego. And how is this pain, or me relinquishing all control to my ego, or in letting it protect its fragility? Because listen, we all have egos, and if you say you don't have one, you're lying. Everyone has one. It's just pronounced more in different people and announced different and more often with different people. But pain is also often in the ability to push it down, is your ego saying, whoa, I'm not ready for this today. I like to feel confident. I like to be this. I like to feel that. I don't want to be like there's any chinks in my armor. I don't like to be tested. I ain't got this today. And that relationship to pain we have with our ego is that, because once that overrides and overtakes, we become vulnerable. Once you go into that pain, once you accept it, once you push to that level to where the only thing is utter and total complete exhaustion, or you're going to blow up. And both of those basically strip ego's place within the conversation. Because if you blow up, then your ego's been crushed for most people, and you're not going to be able to inflate it. You're just going to come up with excuses. You're going to be really disappointed. You're going to be bummed. However, if you just totally wax it, you exhaust everything you have. It becomes about your effort. It doesn't become about the pain. It doesn't become about your ego. It becomes about your effort. And that's something that's totally yours, and totally something that you can keep. And those are the things you'll remember, and it changes. And it's so much about what happens in your mental headspace. I mean, I sometimes feel like I talk about this ad nauseum, but we've talked about this plenty of times, but how I was, and I still am, was disappointed with the effort that I had at Chattanooga 70.3 last year, even though I made it on the podium, and that was a great result. Qualify for 70.3 World Championships. I was just dissatisfied. Not with any of those external factors. I wanted an effort, and I guess more like I wanted a approach to the acceptance of pain and effort and exhaustion that I had 6 or 7 weeks before when I was at Texas. Because you saw me at the end of that race. I had nothing.
Yep,
I was done. I was
That might
done.
be the Facebook picture today.
And I was done, and I was done the rest of the day. But I was so happy because I felt like when it got painful, I didn't slow down. I didn't speed up, but I didn't slow down. In terms of, I'm sure my body slowed down because I know I did because I looked at my splits. But I didn't tell my body to slow down, I guess is the moral of the story. I didn't say this is uncomfortable, just take it easy. I said I got to this level of pain, and although my body couldn't withstand to go any faster and maintain speed or maintain pace, I told myself I was going to hold on to this level of pain, no matter what, until I couldn't anymore. And then thankfully, finally, I finished on a moment too soon because I had nothing. Versus Chattanooga 70.3, I admit I had these conversations with, and I think some of it was the heat. And I think you tend to play it a little bit safer because some of those things, again, can be dangerous. Like you don't want to just go blow it out and go a million miles an hour when it's 120 degrees outside. You have to be smart about it. There's dangerous pain, and then there's just, again, you don't like the way it feels, and so I backed it down some, and then I didn't, and then I did again, and then I didn't, and then I finally pushed it, and then when I got done, I was like, God, I was so pissed. I was so pissed because I first, for whatever reason, and I think we all, and everyone has it. We have it in training and we all do, where you had that phrase of like, I just didn't have it today. And oftentimes we equate that to our body just telling us, hey, we just didn't have it. You just didn't have it today, man. And you know what, man? That's okay. Instead of mentally, I just didn't have it today.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it bad enough today. And a lot of times it's not about how bad do you want it, how bad. It's like, what kind of headspace are you in? Are you ready? Are you prepared to, like, when you talk about, like, you listen to like David Goggins, like they talk about like his Navy SEAL training, everyone thinks that, oh, they're training for all these like insane physical feats. No, they're not. They're using physical feats to prepare their minds.
Yep.
And that's what endurance racing is. It's a test, and it's an experience of the mind, and what it can do and what it can tell you to do and how it can control your body and force it to do things you never even a million years thought you could do. Our body is just the vessel. Your mind is the captain. Your body is the ship. And as big and as huge as it is, it still controls it. It might take it a minute to get things moving, but again, it's that conversation, and it's remembering that it's your mind so oftentimes can, because again, like going back to like just regular pain, like just think of all the stuff that people have gone through in their lives.
Oh, I know there's examples that are crazy that people have gone. I think I think your mind initially is going to go no, but if your body's like, look, dude, I'm in. And then if you can flip that switch a little bit to get your mind on board, that's the powerhouse of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. I just looked it up because I was curious about, like, when we were trying to define pain, I looked up the official definition of it, and it says physical suffering or discomfort caused by illness or injury. And obviously those are gray areas, man. It's like, I think I was trying to describe there with my hips why that's when I feel pain. It's almost like I feel like if I push this over the top right now that I might injure myself.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
That's obviously what you don't want to do. Or if you're discomfort caused by illness, that's just such a gray area. It's like, what is illness sometimes, and is it real? I don't know. I mean, a lot of times we can talk ourselves into being sick too. So it is. I think that's a really great way to put it. And the whole thing about Goggins is, his whole stay hard and train your mind to be able to handle these situations. There's a lot of wisdom in there. And it's, he's an extremist on a lot of levels. But again, just taking, it's like building up your run. It's the same kind of principle, really. It's just sort of like get a little bit further into that. And the
Yep.
next thing you know, your pain threshold is going to grow. Some people come from a high pain threshold early, and but others, I think, like even me coming into this sport, the first time I ran a half marathon, dude, I couldn't walk for like 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and now I can go out right now almost twice a week and run close to that without hardly any ramifications.
Yeah, it's a very, and that's why I think it's like such a good topic, because there is no answer. There is no like perfect answer. Like, yeah, just toughen up, man. Just toughen up. Yeah. Just shut your mouth. that kind of conversation like doesn't work.
But just toughen up a little more.
Just toughen up. Just go
more.
faster. I'm like, that's like what everyone's worst. Like, that's what you hear PE teachers say, not coaches. And it's like, find, like, just be willing and give yourself opportunities that are short enough to where and if you think it's a protection of the ego, or you think it's a protection of self, or if it's a protection of you and how you see yourself as an athlete, that, like, I had an athlete who did a half marathon, she PR'd, but still we thought collectively that you just didn't pull the trigger quick enough. Like, it used to, and again, like, she's just a runner. She's fairly new to like really trying to race it. And I said it's a fine line, racing a half marathon. And I generally think racing an actual marathon is probably the hardest thing for an athlete to do. An endurance athlete is racing a marathon, because it's so hard and it's so long and it's so demanding. And I just said I said the next few months you have to hop in a 5K or a 10K once a month. And I want you to just blow up. Or try to, and just go all out. And she did this 5K and last week, and still didn't like negative split it, and just didn't pull the trigger quick enough. But it was a learning experience into oh man, I can handle these speeds. B, it was uncomfortable. I didn't like it, but it's also your brain, because again, like, let's be honest, like, it's your brain. It's also about self-preservation. Mm-hmm. It's like it's your brain's way of protecting yourself. It's how you're alive. Today. It's not like, oh, let me pick up this knife and shove it through my hand. Your brain is smart. It's intelligent. It's the greatest computer on the face of the planet. And so it's about self-preservation. But again, you can still control it. You can still rewire it on occasion to override that system that is self-preservation. And again, so it was like, we learned we can go these speeds, so that's comfortable. And now we know this. Now we know we have the body to withstand it. Now we just have to dig a little bit deeper into not that pain, but just that those feelings of, is it supposed to feel this way? And so again, like, endurance sports is experiential, and so much of it is. And the more you experience, and the more you can allow yourself to feel, and the more races and circumstances and experience you can participate in, the more you're going to gain knowledge from it. And I would gain like that. And again, that's another downfall or pitfall, whatever you want to call it, of people who jump straight from a sprint distance to a full, is that they don't get to experience some of those pain thresholds along the way of what it feels like to just really, really, really race an event. And I had an athlete just getting ready for chatting at 70.3. She said, "Coach, I think I'm finally at like the first time in my life, like, I'm actually ready to race a 70.3, not just do one." Mm-hmm. What's that like? And it's a loaded question, but the mindset and the execution and the preparedness you have to have for the level of intensity is totally different. And the experience is totally different. Not that one's greater than the other, they're just different. And so I think again, the more you can put yourselves in situations, again, 5Ks and 10Ks are what I would call safe, in terms of, yeah, if you blow up, then just go slower. You're gonna finish. but it's about learning. It's about the more conversations you have with anyone, the more you know about them. The more conversations you can have between your brain and your body, and the more uncomfortable. Like you don't learn things about people by just having ridiculous, stupid conversations that have no bearing on their life experiences or that don't dig deep. They're just all superficial. They're all materialistic. So just stop having endless amounts of superficial, meaningless, materialistic conversations with your body. Figure it out. Because when you go and you have a friend or you have a confidant or somebody, you sit down, you have this really hard, sometimes in-depth, hurtful, meaningful, where you dig up all kinds of stuff that you've been through, and it's hard. But now your connection with that person is just like so much deeper than it is with anyone else. That's the same conversations you can have with your body. Is putting it through it and seeing that it can be resilient enough and that it can withstand it. And just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it can't. And guess what? Also, just because you don't like it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. And that's oftentimes the end reason is, or the reason that you should, is just because you don't like the way it feels, just because it doesn't feel comfortable, just because you wasn't planning, doesn't mean that it's wrong either. You just need to figure out what the answer is supposed to be, and oftentimes it's not. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes it is slowing down because, again, pain and injury and self-preservation are super important, but figure it out, because I guarantee you we are more capable of greater things and accomplishing even greater things if we would just get out of our own way. If we could like turn your brain off, it's something my wife says all the time. See, if I could just turn my brain off, I'd be okay. Because you overthink and overthink and overthink. But yeah, it's a great topic. I love topics like this that aren't black and white, and that are super gray, and that have different experiences, and because pain is relative, and you can never. And that's why I hate when people, oh man, you should totally be playing. Like, you have no idea their level of pain. Their level of pain might be so great that you can't even tell how painful it is. But to you, you'd be like crying on the driveway asking for, an ambulance. Mm-hmm. And so again, it's about stuff. It's, again, endurance sports so much as it's as experiential as it is, it's also about self-exploration. And I think oftentimes people don't think of that as pain or uncomfortable, but I think anyone will tell you if you want to grow, you're going to have to change things up or be uncomfortable or put yourselves in situations that you're not used to. And in terms of training and racing, a lot of times that's being uncomfortable. That's covering up your watch. That's covering up your bike computer. That's running to you feel of what's hard and what's not. And so yeah, it's a loaded conversation. As usual with the majority of our podcasts, we don't give out tons of answers that are direct in terms of black and white. There is no other way. It's just sharing our experiences. And I think there's a lot to be further investigated with each individual and their relationship to pain. And again, I think another huge conversation or topic would be about, let's say different horses for different courses. And I think a lot of that is, I think it's so much mental and emotional as much as it is physical, when it comes to distances. And I think that's a healthy conversation to have, and in terms of picking the right races and ultimately the right distances. Would you rather endure, a very long period of uncomfortableness, or would you rather withstand, and do you feel like you're better suited for 4.5, 5 hours of a lot of pain? Or 2.5 hours, 3 hours of extreme pain, for an Olympic. So again, it's a great conversation. It's one of those never-ending topics that there's never a end all be all. The answer, 2 + 2 is 4. There is no 2 + 2 for pain.
I agree. I would love to see people. I'll post a graphic and a link to this podcast in our closed Facebook group. You search Crushing Iron Group and we'll let you in there. And I would love to see people's thoughts on pain actually under that thread. And I think it would be interesting because you're right. It's a gray area. And that's what I really love about this sport is like, there's so, a lot of people kind of think that it's black and white and all figured out, but there's so many levels. I mean, it's like I always tell people when I started drumming and I could get a rhythm down and I thought I had like all these things figured out, and then it just opens a whole nother level of discovery. And I feel like that's what goes on in triathlon too. Is like you think you got something down and then all of a sudden there's just a whole new universe of thoughts and ways and ideas to explore. So
yep.
Cool, man. Again, I would love to hear from you at crushingiron@gmail.com if you have thoughts on what you think the podcast is, what this community is all about, and what it means to you, personal stories, etc. That would be awesome. If you're looking for coaching, email Robbie, C26 Coach.
Head over to the crushingiron.com, which is our one-stop shop in terms of everything that we do from training camps. We have a triathlon camp here starting next week. That's sold out. May and June are both sold out. We have one in August that has a couple spots left. It'll probably be sold out by the end of the week. I've had a couple email inquiries. I think we have 4 spots left. Have a swim camp that's got 8 or 9 open slots left at the end of May. Has more information on those. Have some new tiered pricing and offerings for coaching to hopefully hit everyone's wheelhouse in terms of what they need and what they want and what we can provide. And then information on our blog, other videos, and basically just everything that we do. And that's crushingiron.com. You can click on those tabs for further info, for your stories and what you feel and think about C26 and Crushing Iron in the podcast and what you'd like to see more of. Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com. And for anything else, reach out. C26coach@gmail.com. And if you're listening to this very quickly, in real time here in the next little bit, I'll be at the Ironman Texas Expo today, basically in like an hour, so you have to be like for real quick. But I'll be hanging out. But if we're friends on Facebook, had a people already reach out to me. If we're friends on Facebook or you're not super creepy and we're not friends, you can still message me and hit me up. I'll try to connect with you and happy to chat. And if I can be of any service, please let me know.
Yeah. And Chat 70.3 is coming up. We're going to have a boatload of people there, so same deal. Kind of look for us. And it'll be hard to miss us down there.
Yeah. It definitely will be. We'll be out and about.
Okay, buddy.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
See you, man. Bye-bye.